Welcome back to Trailmakers and more of Fenrir's Airforce. Today we're going to be taking a look at some of the recent additions to the tech tree because we have over 60 jets available now. We'll be looking at everything from the new 15N Wanderlust, which has incredible speed without using any zero drag, the newest missile carrying variant, the 13M31, and the Mark 6 Lancer attached to it, as well as fancy new autopilot system, and the newest VTOL, which isn't too fancy in comparison to those two, but the articulated landing gear was an absolute pain to install. The weld groups fought me every step of the way to the point where I might make a little video just on that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm also going to take a quick look at our tech tree here, because it's getting quite messy, and I'm considering reorganizing the entire thing, both to make it flow better, to make it make a little bit more sense to other people, and just for more interconnections and earning paths, so to speak. I don't want it to be too linear. The whole Fenrir's Airforce is kind of run loosey-goosey, so the tech tree should be kind of the same. But it's all a bunch of just letters and numbers right now. None of the common names are on here or anything, not that would even mean too much to most people. So I'm not going to focus too much on it. This is more of a behind-the-scenes action I'm showing off. So let's get to those planes, shall we? So first up we have the Mark 14 D9C Black Cat. And especially with YouTube's compression, unless you have very keen eyes, you're not going to be able to tell what the special new trait of it is. So I'll pull it up in build mode, and suddenly it becomes a lot more clear. At least part of the deal anyways. So we have a significant zero drag package, which brings the speed up to over, well not over, but about 1,000 miles per hour tops. It's not a complete zero drag. There's a couple of spots like the skis and the armor on the top of the vertical stabilizers that aren't covered up. But that's to just keep it a little bit more stable in flight, and because fighting complexity out the entire time is the other thing that's mainly different about this plane, means I had to sacrifice quite a bit of the armor package. If I take a look at the inner layer, we're actually down to 2x4 panels, which are, well, a quarter of the health per volume of the 2x1s. So, a lot less effective armor, as well as the rails being exposed on that side. They're covered up a little bit from the top here, along center of mass area anyways. But yeah, so drastic changes to the armor package and drastic changes to the speed. And the other change is the variable handling. The lower threshold has been set to 10% now, which is pretty useful and kind of necessary for the highest speeds. Because once we reach supersonic, which should only take another moment, there we go, 10% of our pitch control still throws us around pretty good, and results in a lot of lost speed, of course, which is one of the main reasons why the variable handling is important with the high-speed version. But we can crank up the handling at any point we need. And I'll change our camera mode for a little bit less seasickness-inducingness. But like I said, I left a little bit of the drag in place for stability reasons, though it's still less stable than the original Black Cat. It just has a little bit more wibble-wobble to it. But we're in a fairly medium handling mode right now, and you can see that we have fairly ridiculous handling. We can get going in quite a substantial spin, and all that good stuff. But there's really not a whole lot to talk about this in terms of fancy bells and whistles. Other than, well, if you don't already know some of the things about the Black Cat, it has the variable maneuvering mode, which, if I say a little bit more detail about it, because I realize I might have skipped that over, what it's doing is limiting the maximum angle of all the control surfaces and thrust vectoring by an analog amount. So you can see the indicator changing on the back of the tail there, between the various colors. And I could put a number display, but it's an odd width plane, so it's a little annoying to find a good spot for it. Actually, do I have one in the cockpit in this version? No. I should put one in here. But yeah. It also seems to limit the sensitivity a little bit of the actual, well, not really. It's just the oops. Speaking of sensitivity, I didn't bring it back up as I approached the carrier, so I couldn't pull up fast enough. That is the downside about the minimum maneuvering mode, is that, well, it's quite minimum. I think it's only a 4 or 5 degree change, or maximum change to the control surfaces. But yeah, I think it's about time to move on because I've got 9 jets I want to get through and I don't want to take up too much time in this video. Next up we have the Mark 13 M30 Midnight, which is one of the newer missile carrying variants. Now this still has the very simple and ugly landing gear, which is actually a little glitched into the ground right now. There we go. But yeah, this has a completely revamped, I'm referring to as 4th generation autopilot, which has border avoidance now. Which means if we get out here and start flying around, well, I'll have to fire the missile in order to turn on the autopilot, so I'm going to take a moment to explain first. But once it gets 5,000 meters out in any direction from the center, the plane will automatically do a couple maneuvers and try to turn itself back around. So it shouldn't get anywhere near the outer wall of the map, so no chance of crashing and despawning even when it's in straightforward mode instead of circling mode. And we have the 3 different modes for our autopilot: straightforward, right turn, or left turn. And they all hold altitude a little bit differently, but there's a minimum and a maximum threshold. So it won't go below 300 meters or above 1,500 meters in any of the autopilot settings, just to keep it from hitting all these rocks and stuff like that, or going too high and hitting the top of the map. But I think I've babbled enough, so let's launch the missile. And then use it to kind of chase the plane a little bit. Oh, and I kind of dawdled a little too much. But any moment we should see it rebound up off its lower threshold. There we go. And I purposely left it a little loosey-goosey so that it does that for like dodge and weave action. Because I tend to use the autopilot as a form of bait for the missile. To get people to go in a steady straight line and oh, there goes our border avoidance maneuver. So it does a backflip and then turns approximately 70 degrees in the process. And sometimes it takes a couple tries for it to get pointed back towards center and out of the zone that triggers it. But it seems to have done it in 2 tries this time. Usually only takes 1 or 2. And I'm realizing I could have just detonated the missile early and chased it that way, or focused on it that way. But I really wanted to kind of focus in on how the plane is flying itself, with no inputs from the pilot. We can go ahead and take our look in here. We've got latitude, longitude, and altitude on display. It was mainly for testing purposes, but it's still kind of useful, I suppose. And yeah, the missile is the same one that's available earlier in the tech tree, so I'm not going to focus too much on that. We've got a fancier missile later. Well, it's not too much fancier, but it's upgraded. And let's see, what more to say about this? Alright, the other turning patterns. So at any time you can change the current autopilot setting, and it'll cancel it out without any risk of jamming or overlapping itself. And then to cancel it out, you just have to press the one that you're currently selected on again. So it's a little more straightforward to use, both for deploying the missile and using the autopilot, than some of the other versions I have available. But I'll come in for a nice little landing, even though the landing gear is, well, pretty janky and simple. Particularly on the missile carrying versions, because those don't even have the shocks on them. But we'll get to the fancier landing gear in just a moment. And I suppose speaking of landing gear, next up we have the Mark 15N Wanderlust, which has no landing gear whatsoever, because some sacrifice has had to be made for speed and efficiency's sake in this version. This is technically a very gutted and retrofitted Black Cat, which started off at 122 power cores for reference, and now it has 266 power cores, so more than double the thrust, because I didn't adjust the weapons package at all. And I suppose I'll show it a little bit. I was considering keeping it a secret as to how it's crammed in there so well, but it's just a sort of zigzag pattern. I suppose it's hard to get a good angle at because everything's crammed in, even the piston glitch open. But yeah, we've got thrusters in the top and the bottom sections, of course, all zigzagged in. Plus there's thrusters throughout the entire tail, and even in the nose. So every inch of this plane is full of thrust. And every bit of complexity went towards either putting in thrusters or making sure the thrusters stay attached, like these little rails here. But if we go ahead and take a fly, actually I'm going to go ahead and repair it once because that one went too smoothly. There we go. There's its little dance. This section near the canards here, where the piston glitch overlaps, it really doesn't like getting into position. It's fine once it's there, and the servo is resting in between these two wedges, but getting there, the plane typically hates it, to the point where it flips it around every time you spawn in almost, and sometimes even breaks itself. But that's just a little quirk of it that I'm willing to accept, because sometimes it goes just nice like that too. But similar to the Zero Drag Black Cat earlier, the variable maneuvering mode on this was turned down, although only to 15%, because our maximum speed is just over 700 in this. There's no zero drag glitch, but we can go supersonic if we take a shallow dive. So let's gain some, well, not a shallow dive, a moderate dive, like 45 degrees or so. We'll gain some altitude. And then, well, this is a steeper dive than I wanted to do, but here we go. I'm gonna leave that in. I knew I was gonna hit that rock before I pulled up, but I wanted to make sure that I could get the sonic boom too. And I got the sonic boom just in time, just to prove that it's capable of it. It's not capable of going much faster than that, and like I said, it's got to be in a dive to get our sonic boom. But it's all natural, no zero drag whatsoever. And yeah, what else do we have going on here? Oh, we've got the autopilot system. So it's a little bit different on the Black Cat and the Wanderlust series, but not too much different. This is what I would consider a third generation autopilot. It's fine-tuned and balanced out and everything, but we don't have border avoidance. So our straightforward mode, especially with the speed that we're at, will eventually crash us into the wall. So we'll go ahead and start the turning mode, and you can see how quickly it evens itself back out. And it will buck up and down a little bit as we hit our upper or lower threshold accordingly. If we take a look inside our cockpit, we have... Oh, yep, that's latitude, longitude. Do I not have an altimeter in here? Oh, no, that is an altimeter. Okay, yeah, so we're hitting our maximum altitude of 1500. And the numbers are kind of overlapping there, so I mistook it. But yeah. And our, oh, we've got the display for our variable handling there too. Gonna ramp it up to, well, it displays 99%, but it's just a display quirk, it's 100%. And then it can go down to 15%. And that doesn't affect the autopilot, however. The autopilot just kind of does its thing. And I've completely lost the map, and I'm not going to take the time to fly back to it, because without landing gear, the landings are always pretty rough anyways. So let's move on. Next up, we have the 13 M32 Midnight, which has the articulated landing gear, and the 4th generation autopilot that has the border avoidance. So we'll go ahead and take flight here. And we've got our articulated landing gear going on. And we didn't have to sacrifice the piston glitch much. The structural integrity of the upper wing section is decreased a little bit, but not tremendously. And I recalibrated all the handling, so when we've got our landing gear up, we hold our pitch pretty well. We seem to be nosing down ever so slightly, so I could dial it in a little bit better just with the resting angle of our landing gear. Bring that up a little bit. But I also don't want the tires to poke out to the top of the wing section either, so I might just leave it as is. But this also has the fuel and ammo systems going on in it, which is what these, I get a good angle, well, that's too close, get a good angle here, what these numbers on the back are. And we have variable firepower, so we have 120 units worth of firepower available. In setting 1, we have 2 smart cannons active and use 1 unit per second. In setting 2, we have 4 smart cannons active and use 2 units per second. And as you would expect from there, next we have 6 smart cannons and it uses 3 per second. And we have 12 pairs of rockets available and 500 seconds worth of fuel at full thrust. The fuel usage varies with the thrust usage. So, I thought I was heading back to the island, but apparently I wasn't. I should have known from how long I was flying that I wasn't. But I was more focused on what I was saying. And to not do that, I suppose I could just activate... Oh, how do I activate it again? Oh, right, yeah. Air brake and then the function. So I can activate our autopilot while I'm babbling, and it'll fly straight, but then once we get too far from the middle of the map, it'll turn back and everything. And since I don't have a missile, I'll focus a little bit more on the actual handling of the plane in the meantime. So as you can see, it drops a little bit in straightforward mode and ricochets off the lower threshold. But that's just fine and dandy, and we should be bouncing off the outer limits any moment. Yep, there we go. The handling is a little bit different just with the reconstruction of the plane and the drag adjustments, but it handles more or less the same. The fourth generation autopilot can be transferred onto most of the M series, or 13M series, and do just fine. It just took 2 backflips there to get out of here. And yeah. That more or less covers everything about this model, so I believe it's time to move on, because I don't want to spend too much time on any given plane, at least not until the later ones. Let me check the recording timer real quick as we move on. But before I put it away, I am just going to demonstrate the new landing gear and how much, better it lands. And also its ground capabilities, because I completely forgot to show that off. Just turn around real quick, and I don't even know why I bothered putting in the gear, because I'm just going to pop it right back out. Keep our air brake open, line it up nice and gentle, close the air brake, and hit the brakes again. And that's because we've got the engine capabilities for our wheels. We have tank steering on the front too, for taxiing on the ground purposes. We can even turn in place, because I reduced the drag on the rear wheel. Well, the sideways drag anyways. And, what else was I going to say? Alright. The reverse feature, instead of being tied to any of the other controls, is tied to the air brake. So, you tend to use the air brake a lot as you're coming in for a landing anyway, so it just felt natural, and I was running off controls in other places. And it takes off nice and smooth. Although with the landing gear open, as you can see, we nose down pretty significantly, so you've got to pop your landing gear up pretty quick if you want to get back into a nice even flight. But yeah, there's our new landing gear. And next I'll show one of the new Black Cat variants that has the new landing gear as well. Because that's been the focus of the last couple of days, is upping the landing gear game. It was consistently the biggest complaint that people had about my planes, so I'm fixing it. Much less simple. Although the Black Cat sacrifices even more of the structural integrity of the upper wing section to get the articulated landing gear to play nice with the piston glitch. So the articulated landing gear versions are less durable, unfortunately. But it's the ups and downs that make every model unique. So very similar to our last plane there, we've got fuel and ammo systems in this one. And this is an upgunned version of the Black Cat, so we've got our regular 3 firing modes, and then our 4th firing mode adds a set of blasters in. And we've got 200 units of ammunition in this version. What is the landing gear? Right, there we go. Air brake and down on the D-pad for this version. I should really check the controls before I hop in the plane now that I'm going through all these, but it's okay. Yeah. The handling of this one has also been adjusted to accommodate the new landing gear in terms of the drag profile. Although it's not perfect, the Black Cat was never quite perfect for the drag profile, unlike the Midnight, so it's still within acceptable parameters. And then for firepower, we've got the 2 smart cannons, 4 smart cannons, 6 smart cannons, and 6 smart cannons plus blasters. And using that 4th firing mode will chew through your 200 units of ammo in only 50 seconds, so it's a balancing act. I'm coming for a nice little landing here. Hit the brakes. And with the tail dragger style landing gear, you do tend to slap your nose into the runway every time, but very rarely has it actually been with enough force to damage it, unless the landing itself has been coming in at a really terrible angle just due to, well, bad piloting or damage to the aircraft. Anyways, I think it's time to move on, because there's not too much different about this from the other Black Cats available. Next we have the 13M31B. It's the B just because the development version is the 31A, and that one, the missile varies on it. And, oh I know, the landing gear is also the generic landing gear on that one instead of the articulated. But the articulated landing gear is one of the reasons why I'm starting this in build mode, because you'll see our Mark 6 Lancer here has foldable wings. And in build mode, they start unfolded because they glitch through the weld groups for prettiness and aerodynamics sake. Well, not aerodynamics, they still have the drag because well, you know, they're exposed out here, they still have their drag. But for prettiness sake, it folds up completely while it's in its normal mode. But to get there, it has to get past the landing gear, which is clearly a separate weld group. So when you spawn it in, the landing gear kicks out to the sides, and then after a moment's delay, the wings fold up. Trying to get a good, maybe sticky orbit? Yeah, sticky orbit will do me right. There you go. Now you can see it. I'll do a quick slow-mo. But I think you get the point. So not only do we have a better missile, we've got the better landing gear on this one, although it's slightly adjusted from the standard package, which I'm going to quickly show off. Quickly. For both the Midnight series and the Black Cat series, in my tech branch, or not tech branch, but tech stuff, I have a conversion kit available. So once you earn your first Midnight or Black Cat with the landing gear, you'll have access to the conversion package for any of your other versions that you want to fix the landing gear on that aren't already like that on the tech tree. But enough of that babbling. Let's get to the missile. Now it's still the 4th gen autopilot. And I realized I didn't put up my landing gear. Can I put up the land? I probably can't put up the landing gear. I just changed it. That little hiccup there was changing the... Okay, did I? Yes, I think I managed to put up the landing gear. I remembered the controls without looking at the plane. But the wings are there because I got rid of the gimbal jet in here. And it also adds a little bit more stability to the roll, because the automatic roll stabilization was a little iffy. So it flies a little bit more like a plane now, between its aerodynamic controls and thrust vectoring, with the wings on there. And it's also, because the gimbal jet gave me a little bit more space and weight to play with before the piston glitch gave me issues, it's faster with a little bit more thrust. Although I suppose that's also fighting against the new drag of the wings, but that's pretty negligible. Boom! Direct hit. Took me a little while because I'm notoriously bad at flying and talking at the same time. But I wanted to be patient and make sure that I got the kill shot. But I suppose we can move on now. Next up, we have the Mark 15B6 Sunrise, which is a VTOL, which you can see on the back here. We've got articulated thrusters, and all the thrusters in the body, everything but our maneuvering thrusters, the wiggly bits here, articulates downwards. And that made it really, really troublesome against the weld groups and everything, because even though the piston glitch is pretty insignificant, we've got the piston glitch going on. We have the articulated thrusters, which also move through weld groups in order to not leave space for drag. And we've got the articulated landing gear. And getting everything to play nicely was very, very tedious. I might add a quick montage right in here as I take a brief pause of speaking. But I might make it its entire own video too, because it was like a 2-hour ordeal getting this thing to work right with the articulated landing gear. So I really hope people appreciate it, but I don't necessarily appreciate it too much either, because although I made sure VTOL modes remained entirely balanced, and that's our firing mode, that's that. Okay, meow while holding air brake for the landing gear. But if we go into forward flight mode, and we'll toggle our maneuverability mode up a little bit, you'll quickly start seeing the stability of trying to fly in a straight line is abysmal. If if you leave it trending downwards even a little bit, it picks up an even more severe downwards trend. And if you leave it trending upwards even a little bit, it drastically pitches upwards on its own. So forward flight is in a terrible state right now. Definitely needs some work, hopefully before anyone actually earns the thing. But I had to take a break on the project just because the Wild Group nightmares, all that stuff. It is what it is. The challenge is part of the fun of it, though. It's just, in order to not get frustrated, you do need to take a break once in a while, and 2 hours of frustration was about enough for me. Well, let's go ahead and do a little backflip. Pop our landing gear out. Come into VTOL mode. And bring her down nice and gently. And I suppose we'll move on from here. Next up will be a quick one. We've got the 13M34, which is a thrust increased version of the Midnight. Similar to the Wanderlust, we've got a zigzagging engine pattern that runs the entire course of the bottom section and most of the top section. At least as much as we could get away with while still getting our landing gear to articulate and fit in. So we've got, I wrote it down, I think it's 120 or 170 miles an hour increase? 120 mile an hour increase. So not too drastic, but it's a natural speed increase without zero drag. And I'm planning to make a couple more fancier options based on this, but this is pretty much just the standard version. So it doesn't have autopilot or variable systems or anything like that. We just have the landing gear and the increased speed. And actually, no, we do have a control on right on the D-pad. What's that about? We got main fire. Oh, we've got right. We have a auxiliary set of blasters. So we've technically got 2 firing modes on this. We've got the regular 6 smart cannons, which no variability between those. But then you can, with a simple toggle on the right D-pad, arm the lasers and add them into the mix. And as you can see by the speedometer, we're not quite getting to 500, but the original speed runs about 350, so it's actually a 130 mile increase, not 120. I must have made some slight modifications after I wrote that. But I've lost track of the island, haven't I? I feel like I just saw it. Maybe it's over here? Oh well. What more to say about this version? Probably not much. Like I said, this is a basic iteration of the increased thrust model. And I'll go from there, including the new tech that I'm going to show off in the final version. I'm just going to respawn because I've definitely lost track of the island. So the last plane I wanted to for sure take a look at is the 13M12B. Now as you can see, it's thoroughly and I think entirely zero dragged. There's probably a couple inefficiencies somewhere still that I've missed because I only did it today. And it uses only 2 detachable blocks, which is the standard limitation of my server for lag purposes. Given that when if you have like 100 different chunks breaking off every time you spawn in, it creates terrible lag spikes. It's just to get people to build a little bit better, and also it makes sure that people actually know what they're doing with the zero drag glitch in order to use it. People with gallery builds that go zoom zoom, I'm sorry, but you might be out of luck in my servers. But I'm getting off on a little tangent because this has a little bit of new tech in here. Although it's buried, so I can't actually show it off, and it's just logic blocks and yada yada. But what it is a speed-dependent variable maneuvering setting, or variable maneuvering system, I mean. So once you start going over 150 miles per hour in this one, which is pretty easy with the zero drag, it begins to automatically dial back the maximum angle of your control surfaces. Once you get supersonic, it's well under 50%, so it keeps your handling nice and smooth, not twitchy at all. And by the time you get up to close to the maximum, around 1,000 miles an hour or so on this version, you get down to about 5 or 10% handling. I forget exactly what I left balance at, but I think it might be about 5%. So then it becomes nice and gradual, so you don't have to shed your speed at all, and you don't have to worry about manually changing it or keeping track of anything. And this is inspired kind of as not necessarily for the high speed builds, but for an accessibility thing for my friend, who typically has lag issues and trouble flying my planes because of it, because they're very twitchy. I don't want to say twitchy, but they're very fast responding handling that I typically have them set to. He had to dial back the handling on it significantly in order to actually work it with his lag situation. But I think once I get the speed-dependent variable system in his hands, it might help him out a little bit with that. But he's a pretty good builder too, and figures out a lot of stuff on his own, so it's not like I have to do everything for him. Don't worry about that. You're good, buddy. And we're coming for a landing, which I completely botched because I forgot this is a zero-drag version, and it just didn't shed enough speed in the air. That's okay, because once you're at lower speeds, all that handling comes naturally back. You don't have to take your thumb off the controls to adjust anything, which, trust me, that doomed me in quite a few landing flights in the zero-drag, the previous zero-drag version and other fast planes. Just coming in too hot, trying to adjust the maneuverability setting down up or down accordingly, and crashing with my thumb off the stick before I could get back at it. But yeah, I think that about wraps up the video. If you like what you've seen, or have any questions, leave a comment in the comment section. It's good for the algorithm. And if you want to support the channel, like and subscribe. It's also good for the algorithm. And good for me. Makes me happy. But time permitting, I'm going to record one more plane that's a work in progress, but it's too interesting to pass up. So I'm going to say bye-bye now, and oh, that was probably the worst landing I've done with the new landing gear. That was just terrible. Yeah, let's sign off on that note. And yeah, bonus footage if possible. Okay, time for the time permitting bonus time. We have the Mark 13 M24C, which has our old friend, the Mark III Lancer, an amphibious missile, but I'm converting the plane itself to be amphibious, as well as the thing holding it back, the autopilot. The autopilot needs a lot of work because it needs to be able to work underwater just as well as the air, and splitting the difference just doesn't work because the handling is so much different between the two modes. Well, I say modes, it's just a natural and automatic switch. But as you can see, we've got, especially with the missile attached, slower than typical handling for the Midnight series, above water. And then once we dive, it becomes even more drastic. So that difference in speed and handling is what messes up the autopilot so much. And we can go ahead and launch our missile from underwater. Now the Mark III Lancer is not super efficient in the water. It can catch slow submarines and boats and things like slow boats and things like that. But it's mostly just so it can get itself back out of the water if you're chasing a low-flying plane and mess up a little bit. You try to shake you close to the water's edge and you just go, haha, no, I swim. But here's one of the issues with the autopilot going on. You can see it's risen to the surface, but it doesn't actually break the surface and get away from it, so it's still going as slow as it is in the water, but exposing itself to fire from the air, which is possibly the worst situation for the autopilot to be finding itself in. And yeah, I've yet to see it get itself fully out into the air, but it seems to be trying. I can hear the thrusters going there. Blow up the missile and focus on it a little bit better, I suppose. And the other thing that might just be a miswiring or something like that is that turning on the autopilot with the missile still attached results in it completely over-rolling and going haywire rather than just doing the left-hand turn that it's supposed to do. And if I do it in the water, it's not as drastic, but that's just because, while it's moving so much slower, it has more time to properly correct itself, I'm assuming. But yeah, it's still a work in progress, but this is going to be an interesting addition to the amphibious line of the tech tree. But with that, I'm definitely going to be signing off, and I already said all the YouTube stuff, all the like and subscribe nonsense, so I'm just going to say, bye-bye now.
PlayStation